Right. Welcome to here the mighty plains of Ireland for another week of comic book talk with your friend, me, Carlz. Hell, um, it's it's been one of those times where I don't know. Can you call consensus or something like fate or whatever? Of course, I'm talking about the Eisner Awards that they were just uh, given, awarded. That is the word that I was looking for. Awarded. They were awarded this past weekend during San Diego Comic Con, of course, and man, there was no surprise whatsoever. At least in the big ones, I think there was no challenge for anything. I mean, the ones that I don't follow that much. That um, what is it called? Like best um academic presentation or something. I don't know. But the big ones, of course, I'm talking about best one shot. Of course, won by Absolute Batman. That issue, I reread it the other day, and it's not as edgy as even I remember it, or even as I kind of like romanticize it on my mind. But it is like ethereal in some ways, because of course this is not Batman. This is Absolute Batman, and they do this magic with it, like let's push this character to places he would never go. And I kept thinking about that shit. Like they're never gonna do something like this with regular Batman. Of course, he has beaten up cops and everything, but he has never been an icon of like social distrust or like social anguish, because he's a rich fuck, right? So he has never really represented the people until Absolute Batman. And Daniel Warren Johnson's art is it just blows it away. It has those strong speed lines and those wrestling moves. But I kept thinking about that. It's like Absolute Batman can do what regular Batman will never be able to do, or it will never really represent the same, you know. But it was obvious that he was gonna win. Out of the best one-shot single issue category, of course, I loved A Monster Walks into a Bar, Something is Killing the Children, that little spin-off. Um, and Ice Cream Man is always there as well, you know. But Absolute Batman, it just took the perfect scenario, the perfect situation, like the perfect moment in time, and just ran with it. And of course, the same goes for Absolute Batman as best continuing series. Man, the Absolute universe. We had Batman and Wonder Woman both nominated. It was just incredible. The one thing that the kind of like the ones that surprised me a little bit was Storm, one of the few nominations from Marvel. Bear in mind, Marvel went like really like in like I think they didn't want anything. I don't hate the Storm book, but I feel like it has never given me the payout that is supposed to have. You know, when they started making the rounds with the daughter of Storm, and I think the way they introduced the character and the way the character basically did anything in that book was so, I don't know, like it was messy and it was too fast. You didn't get the time to appreciate who she was. Maybe they're saving it for later, but And of course, the Department of Truth by James Tynion, it's always there. FML by Kelly Sue. I think it's worth some recognition. And and of course, best limited series. I talked just last week about the ending of Absolute Martian Manhunter. It was the crown jewel of the whole thing. It really was. I don't know all of the other nominees, especially the ones from Oni Press. I don't follow that publisher. But for example, Bronze Faces by Boom Studios, I couldn't get into that book. I thought it was so weird, like some high fantasy, high sci-fi. But I know me, and people that the handful of people that follow me know me. When thing gets too worthy, it just loses me. And the continuation of Beneath the Trees also could have won. But Absolute Martian Manhunter, as a limited series, was a more rounded up kind of like situation. I think, as I mentioned last week, the ending was great. It showed you that you didn't need a whole universe to kind of like push your character. Like, you didn't need to talk about Batman or Wonder Woman or anything. But at the end of the series, they acknowledge how it's everything is related. So it was an amazing situation. The one category that I disagree with is best new series. Assorted Crisis Events by Dennis Camp and Eric Sawadsky. I can't get into that book. I didn't get it. Am I dumb? I might be dumb. But I didn't get it. I don't get that book. It goes places. It says stuff, but I can't connect to it. But the whole thing about the best new series is that I didn't really care for too much for any of those. So among the nominees, we had Batman, also from Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez. I've been liking the what they're doing with Batman, because they're doing a little bit of how can you say, it could be like charismatic or something. It has the gravity of Batman, but it has this kind of like a spicy side where it's like more conspiratory and more suspicious. It's not even that dark, and I think the human interactions are very un-Batman like. Like, there's way too much connection between the characters, not so much mystery. But at the same time, I haven't been able to see or enjoy a big plot, a big thing that has happened, a big villain leading the way, or a big conflict looming around. And I talk about Ghost Pepper at some point by Ludo Lulabi. And the art is amazing, but it feels too much anime-ish for my taste. Narratively speaking, Ghost Pepper is just a shonen anime. So, Black Cat, we talk about it. I've talked about it plenty because I like the character. I love G. Willow Wilson. But for it to be nominated to Best New Series is really weird, considering that people seem to hate that book so much on the internet. So it was weird. And I also feel that that is a book that has lacked that north, that objective. Right now, it's on a storyline with Punisher, which feels so odd, so weird, because Felicia ran over the Punisher's dog. I don't know if this is a comedy or like what it. And there's a strange chemistry between those characters. And by the way, I've said it before. Did they forget what happened with the Punisher last time? Like, did Marvel just wash all of that off? The best Punisher storyline in years, and they just brush it off. now we have like 5 or 10 uh, titles with Punisher in them, like 3 with Spider-Man. You know, I love Marvel, but like DC has been killing it so much with its all-in initiative and its absolute universe. And sometimes Marvel does this shit, and I'm like, come on, dude. I know you want to promote the Spider-Man movie. I know, and what is there gonna be a Punisher show besides the watch? I don't know, but you put Punisher in like 3 titles with Spider-Man. Just you know those titles are not going anywhere. You know the stories are not going anywhere. They just pick one main characteristic from the character and they put it in an isolated uh, kind of like adventure or something. You know, Spider-Man is a goody two shoes. Punisher is violent. That's it. There's nothing more from the characters. It feels so convenient and so easy. Oh, the new movie is coming out, so here's a book with Spider-Man and the Punisher. But what are you doing to bring them together? What sort of story are you making for their personalities to develop something or to shine something? You know, Marvel, editorial wise, in that sense, sometimes is such a mess. Such a mess. And part of the books, the recommendations that I'm going to talk today, sort of prove that even more so. So before ending this talk about the Eisners, the last new series was Exquisite Corpses by James Tannion. Um, Another book that I really liked, but I didn't really love it until the end. That's all I can say. It was really kind of like these sort of extreme books where it's just like Mad Max Fury Road, you know, like something that just goes fast, goes hard, and then it ends. So there's not that much to say. But yeah, that's all the time I'm gonna spend on the Eisners. Just um, the expected sort of portrait of this side of comic books, and no surprise really. Like that's it. Really, there's really no surprise. Should I? Oh yeah, I should call a little bit on the artist. Well, Javier Rodriguez from Absolute Martian Manhunter, obviously, because he just made every issue a fucking painting, and you gotta shout out the lettering also. They should have they should have it like hand by hand, because the creativity they did with all the text in Absolute Martian Manhunter, it's just, well, they also won in lettering. Now that I'm seeing, that was just brilliant. That was the sort of experience that is gonna come up from here on in 2 years, and they're gonna release the trade. They're gonna, I don't know, get the legendary edition, because it's totally worth it. But okay, let's jump to this week's recommendations. In first off, Justice League Night Vision as special, an adventure with Batman and Lex Luthor. Picking up from what I was talking about editorial wise, as Marvel being a mess and DC doing it all right with All In, this is another example. Like you do the math. You start from DC's KO, right? You start by the fact that the heroes saw a possible future on their visions, the ones who participated in KO. 2 of the heroes slash villains were Batman and Lex Luthor, right? And this is all a sequence. Then you jump into Justice League, where they do this they do this program where they take villains. There's a word that I'm missing when you take like reform villains. You give them a chance to reform themselves, right? We're talking about a sequence. And in that book, of course, you get Lex Luthor, being Lex Luthor, trying to take advantage of the fact that he is now allowed to. He has this free pass from the Justice League. And of course, he starts doing Machiavellian things. He starts planning and plotting because he's Lex Luthor. But all of that is related to his vision. And you connect that to Batman vision, and you get a clash between Lex Luthor and Batman. So what do you do next as creative and smart editorial people at DC? You bring them together in the special and try to not only bring their visions together, but make it a sequence of events of what's been happening. You know, that is how you do it. So you get this special, and you've been following their adventures ever since the end of KO, and everything makes sense, and it's great, and it feels holistic, it feels complete. That's how you do it. And now I can't say any more than that. And there's no more selling point, and there's no better selling point than that. This is a continuation or a moment of a story you've been following since, when was KO? Like 3-4 months ago already? Great work. Next. I talk about, I didn't know what else they were going to do with the 20th century. It's not Fox anymore. Yeah, it's just 20th century whatever IPs at Marvel. And Marvel has been exploiting these sort of Fortnite-ish kind of like crossovers. And the thing about crossovers is that there's just this morbid curiosity about some of this shit. Like plain old curiosity. Planet of the Apes, they had a crossover that it just ended with the Fantastic Four that I thought it was okay. But as many of these crossover goes, they just do the bare minimum in a sense of kind of like making a shock. In that comic, spoilers, the famous characters from Planet of the Apes, they got the Fantastic Four powers. I think Dr. Seuss became the thing. That sort of thing. But sometimes that morbid curiosity is more than enough. And in this case, do I want to see the Predator just like ripping some poor ape's spine? I never thought about it. I never wanted to see it. But if they offer it to me, I'm gonna check it out. I'm not expecting any of these, particularly this story, Predator versus Planet of the Apes, to be anything revolutionary. It's just that curiosity. You want Predator to rip poor ape's spine? Sure, why not? Will this change any of these franchises as what they have been doing with what is the name of the latest Predator? Badlands or Prey. I've talked about that plenty. You can see my videos on it. Is it gonna be that revolutionary? Probably not. Most likely not. And I don't know anything new about Planet of the Apes. I don't know if I saw the latest Planet of the Apes of the latest run. Which one was it? Was it the one with Woody Harrelson? I don't know. And frankly, I don't really care. I'm okay with those movies, but I'm not a big fan, like a diehard fan of Planet of the Apes. I just like them. So, next. And speaking of Marvel, I'm gonna be a little bit more positive about Marvel in this case, because this new, it's an event, the Queen in Black event. It's happening right now, starting this week with issue number 1. The Queen in Black, Hela, has taken over Null, a character that If you know me, you know that I don't really love that. And of course, it's not the biggest event. And in a way, in Marvel right now, they are running two events: the Queen in Black and the Avengers Armageddon. And I don't know. This is Queen in Black. I don't know how well it was kind of like created alongside what happened in Marvel Rivals. I really don't know. But anyways, let's hope it's a little bit more different to the whole Null event. You know, Null in preparation to this event, they had that Null miniseries where he killed the light or something. You know, they do this metaphorical mumbo jumbo with Null about being a dark thing, and then he was before that he was imprisoned by Hela. Whatever. The point is, I hope it's not the same as the event led by Null. Let's see what Hela does with this. And I'm really curious now to really think, how was this related to the Rivals event? But anyways, Hela is now the Queen in Black. She has the symbiote, and let's see what she does. At least we can expect some sort of interaction with Venom, because the whole point of the first big Venom storyline was Venom. It was Eddie Brock. It ended up by Eddie Brock being a god and whatever. And it sort of played with the big symbiote narrative in a way that I don't think they're gonna do it again. You know, I'm ready to see how familiar this is, but it's still a big deal in Marvel. I've been liking the Venom book. All the other symbiote has been a little bit disappeared, and you know, let's see how good it is. Considering that recently Carnage was like not depowered, but it was brought down a couple of levels, and they've been messing around with Norman Osborn being the Red Goblin, and you know, it's kind of messy. So when they do these even tiny or momentary events, it's curious enough. Let's see, did I put it correct next? Yes, I put it correct. This is what I wanted to talk about this event in particular. Even though it follows this sort of same Marvel kind of like dynamic where I don't feel like they do anymore like big world spanning events. You know, even for Armageddon, even for Imperial, I'm missing. This is gonna be a big throwback, but I'm missing like an Avengers X-Men type of event. I feel like the recent events in Marvel, they are like side stories. They are like things that happen while everything else is happening. And even if, like in DC, even if there were parallel events while KO was happening, KO was so big, KO was so important, KO was so relevant that you could not pay attention to it. Unlike that, both Imperial and even Avengers Armageddon, and they're like things that you could go like, oh, okay, they are there. Like you could perfectly have ignored Imperial, one of its many flaws. After the main title was kind of like flopping, you realize that you could have ignored Imperial. That is not something you could ever do with KO. But anyways, the fact is that this new event, Queen in Black, I like that at least they are throwing it out in like a package. We're getting two spin-offs of two side stories of the event already. This one is called Defenders of Light and Dark, which of course is a play on Null being this. I don't. It was so confusing. He killed the light or something, or like when he murdered Thanos, he got some weird power. I don't know. Let's hope they explain something. But I like the plot in when they say that only Beta Ray Bill has some sort of um, like consciousness of what happens with Hela or who she was. And anything led by Beta Ray Bill is exciting. So apparently he's gonna gather some heroes representing the light, and there are gonna be some other heroes representing the dark. And Tony Stark is gonna wear his black metal armor, which sounds so cool. So it's another episode in the whole event, and basically you gotta look at it as a whole, and I think that is what gets it's getting me excited for it. So you can read both three of them and get more immersed into this kind of like universe or side universe for a bit, for however long it lasts. Let's see next. Let put it. Yes. So they're already giving you Queen in Black Hela, just another side book for this mini event, where you're gonna immediately get into the nitty gritty of why is Hela being the Queen in Black, what does she want to do, what brought her to this. So you can read these three books as a whole, and get a little bit more immersed, and that's what I wanted. Even if this event is not gonna be as strong as this is KO, even if it's not gonna be as important, because it really can't. You can't have a world-shattering event in Queen in Black side by side by a world-shattering event in Avengers Armageddon, which, by the way, they already announced so many of the fallout of Armageddon. I think Marvel is in that position where they cater to this sort of consumer, which is really strange, where they like to know what happened more than the story itself. What do I mean by this? They put out the solicitations, they make big news, big headlines, and there's like, the fallout of Armageddon is gonna be the X-Men are gonna do this, the Avengers are gonna do that, Iron Man is gonna be in jail, and there's a big demographic who goes like, wow, that is so awesome. If you're into comics or you have some sort of nerd friends, this type of person. They love to just state the facts, and it's like, okay, what's happening in Armageddon, the Red Hulk this, haha, and then they're gonna fight, and this is what's gonna happen. The X-Men are gonna be this, and it's just facts. But where are the stories? I bet you've seen this. We are in the age of Wikipedia, we are in the age of facts, but the immersion, I was gonna say the feelings, but the immersion of the fantasy of comics, it's in the story itself, it's in the text, it's in the art, it's in the narration. But it seems that we are in a generation of just Wikipedia fact checking, like, what was this about? This guy did this guy did that, is like, period. And I think Marvel is catering to that audience. If they didn't tell you that this was epic, you probably wouldn't know about it because you didn't read the book. There's a whole generation, and it's part of the press as well. All the site, the website, the specialized sites, they go like, oh, this is the future for the X-Men. Like, dude, we are in a completely different situation in history on the X-Men. We're doing some other shit, and you're already talking me about what's going to happen in September and how that is hype. You see the anachronistic nature of how Marvel deals with their stories. Like, dude, what's gonna happen in September is awesome. Yeah, but it's the end of July. And the current stories for the X-Men are not over. They're not even close to be over. So are you throwing shade on what's happening right now, or are you buffing it somehow? You see my point? This shit is so strange because you sit down. Okay, this is my week's issue of X-Men. Wow, cool. I don't know, like Magneto just got his powers, but there's still a mystery on who these bad guys are. It's really important, and it's key because what they're doing, they are pressing the mutants again, and we have these new mutants who are not really used to being oppressed, and they are going to the extremes. You are so into the story, and they're already talking about the next one. I don't know. So let's hope this format of Queen in Black delivering more issues, more titles, helps a little bit with the immersive nature or the immersive vibe of the event. But I'm just gonna say DC's been doing it better. Next. I talk about Red Roots. This is already issue 4 when it began because it was really famous. Or on the internet, people talked about it, talked a lot about it because the press release was just one line. It was just one line, and the cover of the first issue had this cute kitty cat on it, and the press release was something like, the lives of the protagonists are gonna change or something like that. So by issue 4 now we have a better impression of what the story is. For those of you who don't know, as a professional killer and a teacher are transported into this fantastic mythical world full of creatures and most importantly, violence. They are thrown in the middle of a war. Even the book is still really mysterious. They haven't fully told you why they brought them and what are they doing there. Like, everything is still a mystery, but now you have a more of a sense of the main story, which these two humans of completely different backgrounds are brought in the middle of a fantasy war full of, I want to say, goblins, monsters, and one of them is brought in to kill, and the other one is brought in to heal in a way. It's really mysterious, but it's been incredibly fun. The art is amazing, and it gives me vibes of the Oblivion song, and sometimes all you need is that one line description of the teacher and the killer being brought to Fantasyland. And they're in the middle of a war that you don't even know what it's about, but it's so engaging. Sometimes these type of books make you appreciate the simple things in life. At the beginning of Red Roots, there was a huge mystery because the teacher character was finding severed heads of mysterious creatures in her house. They haven't still explained that, but the shock of it was highly immersive. So since the descriptions were so vague, you didn't know if it was a serial killer book, if it was a monster book, if it was, I don't know, we didn't really know. So when it finally jumped into this high fantasy war setting, you were already invested in the story. It's great. This book is just great. It's been so fun. The art is amazing, and as any good thriller should do, it just asks you these questions. It leaves you little crumbs or clues of what's really going on, but you don't know it. but by the sheer dimension of it. In the past issue, we got some really nice big open shots of the scale of this war that these two guys have been brought in. The scale, and it has surprisingly some really great humor in it. Some of the monster characters, they go like, oh yeah, this is a war, haha. Like really casual. So even that helps for the thriller elements, because they are not like, oh man, this is a war, we're all dying. They're go like, yeah, this is war, huh? That. So it even has some great humor in it. Red Roots have been killing it. I've been really loving it, and it's also one of those books. I mentioned it before, and I will mention it forever. The balance of the words is perfect. The awe of the art versus the balance of the words. Next. Last but not least whatsoever, my book of the week, the long-awaited Superman Annual, the year 1000. Whatever happened to the Omega Champion? We haven't even finished the summer, was it? The reign of the Superboys. But it was always lingering there. What happened with Superman, aka the Omega Champion? After the ending of the KO tournament, he refused to be the quote-unquote new dark side and took on this positive energy, opposite dark side, like the energy of like good creation. You can call it again dark creation. But again, props to DC to do this well. Just as I did with the first Justice League book, you can trace this. You can trace this to the end of KO, and you can see how the disappearance of Superman fed a bunch of books. Superman Unlimited, Supergirl, anything with Superboy in it. It fed all of those books, as many characters tried to fill Kal-El's shoes once again. But at the same time, the fact that he was the Omega Champion was something that loomed in every other book. Perhaps not so much in Wonder Woman, because it's Tom King. Tom King always does whatever he wants. But it loomed greatly over every book that was somehow related to KO. So it was great. But the question remained, what's up with Superman? What is he doing? What is he thinking? The classic cliche of power corrupts. It has been something, a ghost that has shared space with Superman all of his life. All of the existence of the character has been based on that big question. Does infinite or unlimited power corrupt? Well, Superman got even more power as he became the Omega Champion. So what sort of exercise in Superman kind of like psyche or Superman morals is DC gonna give us with this version of Superman? Like, I can't be more excited about it. Over the years, I've come to love Superman even more. I wasn't like a big Superman guy all my life, but over the years, I've come to love the character even more, mostly because they've done such good stories about him. When he was in War World, goddamn, I enjoy that whole run. I enjoyed it so much because it felt raw, and it felt like, even Superman wearing his loincloth and everything. It felt raw. It felt like they were pushing and pushing and pushing the theory, the imaginary space of a character who is unbreakable. As a philosopher, I just love the idea of seeing values personified. And they always walk on eggshells with Superman by making principles of justice, truth, into a person, because that's the whole point of Superman. He's a person, so he struggles, he has issues, but he always makes the right choice. And having a character, quote unquote, always make the right choice without just being corny and just doing kind of like fairy tale bullshit. And I'm not gonna call it bullshit, it's fair, sometimes you need that, but just not making it pandering. It's a skill that DC has managed to do the last 5-10 years with Superman, since I came back to reading comics in in a continuous weekly way. How long has it been? Let me check. This was so I came back full time to reading comics when Avengers versus X-Men came up. This was 2012. So more than 14 years. I've been for the last 14 years reading non-stop Superman. They mostly nailed it. Now that I think about it, 12 years of Superman, how many authors, how many stories we've lived through. And the fact that you get to this latest story and you still have that drive, that passion, that challenging. Because 10 years ago, you've never thought, or you could have never imagined, Superman becoming this Omega champion. That is how good stories and fantasy worlds work. So yeah, Superman Year 1000, my book of the week. So excited to see what's gonna happen with Superman and how eventually he's gonna come back, right? And that's how you make a good hiatus for a main character. It has been like a couple of months since we've seen Kal-El properly, but I hate it in comic books. Again, I'm gonna throw shade to Marvel somehow. When a character stops for a bit and they go like, I'm gonna go on vacation or something, you gotta make it more impactful. But yeah, this week is full of Marvel and DC, the big two, the big guns. Excited still for the Queen in Black event. I wish they could give us, the skins for free or something. No, because I bought Hela's Queen in Black skin in Rivals. I don't have that much money. And even then, I was like, okay, I'm going to get this one. Imagine they gifted it now in celebration of the event. It would piss me off. But anyways, that's another week for comic books. Congratulations to the Eisner. It was obvious. Go read Absolute Batman. Go read Absolute Martian Manhunter. Hell, if you have the chance. If I had the money, the chance, and the means, I would totally rock Absolute Martian Manhunter trade. It would be so awesome. I assure you, it's gonna get a hardcover, a legendary edition. It's gonna be so many chances. There's so much always to read. This particular week between Marvel and DC, there's a lot of things to look forward to. So yeah, it's another good week for comic books, and I hope you get your fix. I'm gonna get mine, but first I'm gonna drink something for my voice, which has not recovered yet. So thank you all for listening. I hope you get to read your comics and have a good, jolly old time in your fantasy worlds, because the real world sucks. See you next week, hopefully. Take care and bye-bye.